He was a lonely millionaire, marked by traumas no one dared to touch. She, a discreet young woman, carried in her eyes the weight of a forgotten childhood. When the two met, something ancient awoke between fear and fascination. If you enjoy stories of love and romance, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment saying where you are listening from. Winter crept slowly into the Virginia countryside, bringing with it that fine mist that transformed everything into imprecise outlines. Anna Bennett walked through the corridors of St. Vincent's Clinic with her silent steps, carrying the tray of morning medications as if it were an offering. At 22, she had perfected the art of becoming invisible, a talent developed since she was 13, when life taught her that going unnoticed was the best way to survive. Her small hands held the metal tray firmly, but inside, Anna felt that familiar tremor that had always accompanied her. It wasn't exactly fear, but something more subtle and persistent, like her body's reminder that safety was always temporary. She wore the clinic's white uniform with an almost elegant resignation, her brown hair tied in a low bun that hid her delicate nape, her almond-shaped eyes always directed downward, avoiding direct contact with anyone who crossed her path. St. Vincent's Clinic was a place where time seemed suspended, a refuge for elderly people whose families preferred to keep them away from society's eyes. Anna knew every corridor, every creak of the old doors, every damp stain on walls that were never completely repaired. There she had found a kind of peace, caring for people who, like her, had been forgotten by the outside world. On that particular morning, as she headed to Mrs. Morgan's room, a woman in her early 80s who lived in a state of semi-consciousness, Anna didn't expect her life to take a completely different direction. Helen Morgan had arrived at the clinic 3 weeks earlier, brought by a nephew whom no one knew, but about whom everyone whispered. They said he was rich, powerful, and that he had a reputation that made people lower their voices when they spoke of him. Anna gently pushed the door to the room, balancing the tray with one hand while the other searched for the light switch. The yellowish light revealed the fragile figure of Mrs. Morgan lying on the hospital bed, breathing with difficulty, her eyes closed in a sleep that seemed heavier each day. It was then that Anna realized she was not alone in the room. There was a man standing by the window, with his back to her, observing the misty landscape through the dirty glass. He wore a dark wool overcoat that gave him a solemn, almost funereal air. Anna felt her heart race, but her years of training in invisibility kept her silent. She began to move around the periphery of the room, trying not to disturb, preparing Mrs. Morgan's medications with precise and discreet movements. That's when he turned around. Damien Morgan was 53, but his eyes carried the weight of additional decades. There was something brutal about his appearance, not just in his imposing physical build, but in the way he occupied space, as if the world should adapt to his presence and not the other way around. His dark hair, slightly gray at the temples, was impeccably combed. His face had hard lines, marked by years of difficult decisions and sleepless nights. But it was his eyes that impressed the most, a dark gray that seemed capable of seeing through people, of discovering secrets that they themselves didn't know they possessed. When their gazes met, Anna felt something strange happen. It was only for 2 seconds, maybe less, but it was long enough for something invisible to settle between them. She saw surprise in his eyes, as if he were recognizing her from somewhere distant, from some memory he couldn't quite place. Anna, following her self-preservation instinct, immediately lowered her head, but she could feel the blood rising through her neck, warming her ears in a way she had never experienced before. "You're my aunt's caretaker," he said, and his voice was exactly as Anna had imagined it would be. Deep, controlled, with a natural authority that didn't need to be forced. It wasn't a question, but a statement. "Yes, sir," Anna replied, her voice coming out lower than she had intended. She kept her eyes fixed on the medications, organizing them with excessive care, as if that simple task could protect her from the intensity of that gaze. "How has she been?" Anna raised her eyes briefly, enough to see that he had approached a few steps. There was something predatory in his movements, not in a threatening sense, but like a feline observing its prey with calculated interest. "Mrs. Morgan has had good days and more difficult days," Anna explained, her voice gaining a little more firmness when speaking about something she knew well. "She responds well to pain medications, but the mental confusion has been increasing. Sometimes she calls me by other names, talks about people we can't identify. Damien nodded slowly, but Anna noticed that he didn't take his eyes off her as she spoke. It was a disconcerting sensation, like being analyzed, studied. She finished preparing the medications and carefully approached the bed, where Mrs. Morgan slept with irregular breathing. "She talks about you," Anna said softly, adjusting the elderly woman's pillows. "Not by name, but she mentions a boy. Says she needs to take care of a boy." The change in Damien's expression was subtle, but Anna noticed it. Something hardened in his face, a shadow that quickly passed through his eyes. "My aunt always had a very active imagination," he said, but there was a coldness in his voice that wasn't there before. Anna administered the medications to Mrs. Morgan, who briefly opened her eyes, seemingly recognizing her nephew's presence. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Damien approached the bed and took his aunt's fragile hand between his, large and strong hands that contrasted with the elderly woman's delicacy. "I'm here, Aunt Helen," he murmured, and for the first time Anna heard something that could be tenderness in his voice. The woman seemed to relax with his presence, her eyes closing again. Anna finished her care and began gathering her things, preparing to leave discreetly, but his voice stopped her. "What is your name?" "Anna Bennett, sir." "How long have you worked here, Anna?" She hesitated for a moment, not because she didn't know the answer, but because of the way he pronounced her name slowly, as if testing the sound on his tongue. "4 years, sir." "Since I turned 18. And before that?" The question caught her off guard. It was too personal, too intimate for a conversation between a patient's relative and an employee. But there was something in his tone that made it difficult not to answer. "I lived in a shelter in town," she said simply, without elaborating. Damien nodded as if that information confirmed something he already suspected. Anna felt exposed under his gaze, as if he could see through her careful invisibility, through the barriers she had built over the years to protect herself. "Do you have family?" "No, sir." "Friends?" Anna shook her head, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the interrogation. Why did he want to know about her life? Why was he showing interest in a random employee of a clinic in the countryside? "You read," he said, and this time it wasn't a question. Anna followed his gaze and saw that he was observing the small book of poetry she always carried in her uniform pocket. She had forgotten to hide it before entering the room. "Yes," she admitted, blushing slightly. "Fernando Pessoa?" Anna nodded, surprised that he recognized the book from a distance. "Interesting choice for someone so young," he commented, and there was something in his voice that she couldn't decipher. It wasn't disdain nor condescension. Perhaps it was curiosity. Silence settled between them, heavy and charged with something Anna couldn't name. She knew she should leave, that she had other patients to care for, other tasks to complete. But there was something about this man that kept her there, a magnetic force she had never experienced before. It was Damien who broke the silence. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said, addressing more his sleeping aunt than Anna. But she knew in some inexplicable way that those words were for her too. Damien Morgan kept his word. The next day he was there again, and the next and the next. His visits became a constant in the routine of St. Vincent's Clinic, subtly altering the dynamics of the place. The staff whispered in the corridors, speculating about the mysterious man who always arrived at the end of the afternoon, driving a black Range Rover that contrasted with the modest cars in the dirt parking lot. Anna began to feel his presence, even before seeing him. It was as if the air in the clinic changed when he arrived, becoming denser, more charged. She had started organizing her routine so that she was always taking care of Mrs. Morgan during his visit hours, though she told herself it was just coincidence, just fulfilling her duty. The conversations between them were brief, formal, but Anna realized there were underground layers in those seemingly simple dialogues. Damien asked questions about his aunt, but his eyes remained fixed on Anna. He brought flowers, always white and silent ones, lilies or chrysanthemums, which he placed in a vase beside Mrs. Morgan's bed. But Anna had the strange feeling that the flowers were also for her. On a particularly cold Thursday, Anna found Damien sitting in the clinic's small library, a forgotten space where relatives rarely went. He was leafing through an old copy of Hemingway, and when he saw her enter, he showed no surprise at all. "You come here frequently," he said, without raising his eyes from the book. Anna hesitated at the door. This was her secret refuge, the place where she spent her breaks reading poetry, trying to escape from the heavy reality of the clinic. Knowing that he had observed her enough to know her habits made her uncomfortable and, strangely, also a little excited. "Sometimes," she admitted, cautiously entering. "When I have a few free minutes." "Hemingway is one of my favorite authors," Damien commented, finally looking at her. "The way he dissects human nature, how he exposes our contradictions, it's almost cruel." Anna approached slowly, her curiosity overcoming her caution. "I prefer The Old Man and the Sea, the way he faces solitude. I think that's what makes the story so powerful. We never fully understand his struggle." Damien smiled, and it was the first time Anna saw a genuine expression on his face. The smile transformed his hard features, revealing a man she still didn't know. "Interesting perspective," he said. "Truth is always relative, isn't it? It depends on who's telling the story." There was something disturbing about those words, a suggestion that he himself hid truths, told only the versions that suited him. Anna sat in the chair across from his, maintaining a safe distance but for the first time not fleeing from his gaze. "Mrs. Morgan got worse today," she said, changing the subject. "She spent the morning calling for someone named Michael. She seemed very agitated." The change in Damien's expression was instantaneous. The smile disappeared, replaced by a cold mask that Anna was already beginning to recognize. "My aunt has episodes of confusion," he said dryly. "The doctors have already warned me about this." "But she seemed so certain," Anna insisted, not knowing why she felt the need to press this point. "She said Michael was cold, that he needed blankets, that someone had to take care of him." Damien closed the book with an abrupt movement and stood up. His physical presence was intimidating when he was standing, and Anna felt small in her chair. "Michael was my younger brother," he said, his voice controlled but with a harshness that she hadn't heard before. "He died when he was 16. Car accident." "My aunt sometimes confuses the past with the present." Anna felt a tightness in her chest. There was pain in those words, but also something more, something that sounded almost like guilt. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I didn't know." "There's no reason for you to know," Damien responded, but his voice had softened slightly. "It's ancient history." He began to head for the door, but stopped and turned to look at her again. "Anna Bennett," he said her name slowly, as he always did, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. "Do you have plans for after work?" The question caught her completely off guard. "I wouldn't know, sir. I usually just go home." "Where do you live?" "I rent a small apartment in the center of town." "Alone?" Anna nodded, not understanding where he wanted to go with these questions. "Would you like to have dinner with me?" The invitation hung in the air between them. Anna felt her heart race. She had never had dinner with a man, had never been invited to anything by someone like Damien Morgan. Part of her wanted to accept immediately, but her cautious nature made her hesitate. "It wouldn't be appropriate," she finally said. "I'm an employee of the clinic. You're a relative of a patient." "Social rules have never bothered me much," Damien said, approaching her again. "And you don't seem like the type of person who worries excessively about what others think." There was truth in that. Anna had learned early on that the opinions of others were luxuries that orphans couldn't afford. But there was also a sense of danger in that invitation, an intuition that accepting would mean crossing a line from which there would be no return. "Why me?" she asked, surprising herself with her own courage. Damien stopped right in front of her, so close that Anna could smell his cologne, something woody and masculine that made her feel slightly dizzy. "Because you intrigue me," he said simply. "Because there's something about you that makes me remember things I'd rather forget. And because, since I first saw you, I can't get you out of my head." The brutal honesty of his words left her breathless. No one had ever spoken to her that way, with that raw, unfiltered intensity. Anna knew she should say no, should maintain the safe distance she had cultivated throughout her life. But for the first time, a part of her wanted to know what it would be like to be desired, to be seen, to be important to someone. "Just dinner," she said, and her own voice sounded strange to her ears. "Just dinner," he confirmed, but there was something in his eyes that suggested they both knew nothing would be just that. 2 hours later, Anna found herself in the leather seat of Damien's Range Rover, watching the familiar landscape of her town transform into something strange and new through the car's dark windows. He drove in silence, concentrated, and Anna took the opportunity to study his profile. There was strength in every line of his face, but also a melancholy that she was beginning to notice. The restaurant he chose was 40 minutes from town, an old house converted into an intimate place, with few tables and low lighting. Anna had never been to a place like that, where the waiters wore ties and the dishes had French names. She felt out of place in her simple dress, the only one she owned that wasn't the clinic uniform. "You're nervous," Damien observed, after they had ordered. "A bit," Anna admitted. "I'm not used to this. To restaurants or to men?" The direct question made her blush. "Both." Damien nodded, as if that answer confirmed something he already knew. "How old were you when you went to the shelter?" 13, Anna replied, nervously playing with her napkin. "My mother died and there was no one else." "How did she die?" Anna hesitated. It was a story she rarely told, too painful and full of gaps she had never been able to fill. "Accident," she finally said. "At least that's what they told me." She worked as a housekeeper in a big house in the rural area. One day she simply disappeared. They found her in the river 3 days later. Damien had stopped drinking his wine, and Anna could feel the intensity of his gaze on her. "Do you know which house she worked in?" "No," Anna lied, because the truth was too complicated. She knew, or at least suspected, but never had the courage to investigate. The social workers never gave me many details. The dinner continued with lighter conversations, but Anna could feel that something had changed in the dynamic between them. Damien asked questions about her life in the shelter, her dreams, her fears, and Anna was surprised to find herself answering with an honesty she rarely demonstrated. There was something about him that made her want to open up, as if he could understand parts of her that she herself didn't comprehend. When he dropped her off at home, late at night, Anna knew her life had irrevocably changed. She had tasted something new, something dangerous, and there was no going back. In the weeks that followed the dinner, the routine at St. Vincent's Clinic changed completely for Anna. Damien not only continued his daily visits, but began extending them, spending hours by his aunt's bedside, his eyes always fixed on Anna as she worked. There was an intensity in his observation that left her simultaneously nervous and excited, as if he were studying her every movement, memorizing each gesture. Anna discovered that she had begun to prepare herself more carefully in the morning, choosing her newest uniform, styling her hair so that a few strands framed her face. She told herself it was just a matter of professionalism, but deep down she knew she was lying to herself. She wanted him to see her, wanted to be noticed by this man who seemed capable of seeing through all her defenses. While caring for Mrs. Morgan, Anna began to notice details that had previously gone unnoticed. The elderly woman had scars on her hands, old marks that appeared to have been made by burns. Her nails, always impeccably done, had small imperfections that suggested years of manual work. But what most intrigued Anna were Mrs. Morgan's moments of lucidity, when her eyes became crystal clear and she whispered things that seemed like fragments of important memories. "The river girl," Mrs. Morgan murmured one morning, holding Anna's wrist with surprising strength for someone so fragile. "She's back. I knew she would come back." Anna felt a shiver run down her spine. "What girl, Mrs. Morgan?" But the elderly woman had already returned to her semi-conscious state, leaving Anna with more questions than answers. When Damien arrived that afternoon, Anna hesitated before telling him about the episode, but something in the way he looked at her encouraged her to share. She talked about a river girl, Anna said, organizing the evening medications. Said she had come back. I was wondering if she was referring to a specific memory. Damien became very quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on his sleeping aunt. When he finally spoke, his voice had a strange quality, almost hoarse. "My aunt always had a very vivid imagination," he said, but Anna could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands closed into discreet fists. "Damien." Anna said his name for the first time, and saw how he reacted to the sound. "Can I ask you a personal question?" He looked at her with those dark grey eyes that seemed capable of reading her thoughts. "You may. Has your family always lived in this region?" For generations. My great-grandfather built the main property in the 1920s. We've always been influential people in the area." There was something unsaid in those words, a suggestion that the Morgan family's influence might not always have been exercised benevolently. Anna wanted to ask more, but the arrival of a nurse interrupted the conversation. That night, Anna had trouble sleeping. There was something in the way Damien looked at her that affected her in ways she didn't fully understand. She had never experienced physical attraction before, had never understood what it meant to desire someone. But in recent weeks, she had begun to have disturbing dreams where Damien's hands explored her body, where his hoarse voice whispered her name in the dark. It was on a Saturday morning that everything changed definitively. Anna arrived at work to find the medical team in an uproar. Mrs. Morgan had taken a turn for the worse during the night and had been taken to the clinic's improvised ICU. When Anna reached the room, she found Damien already there, standing beside the bed where his aunt lay connected to equipment, monitoring her vital functions. "How is she?" Anna asked softly. "The doctors say it's a matter of hours," Damien replied, his voice controlled but with a rigidity that betrayed his emotions. "Her heart is very weak." Anna approached the bed and took Mrs. Morgan's cold hand in hers. The elderly woman opened her eyes slightly, and for a moment seemed to recognize Anna. Forgive her," Mrs. Morgan whispered, so low that Anna had to lean in to hear. "She didn't know what she was doing." "Who, Mrs. Morgan? Who are you talking about?" But the elderly woman's eyes had already closed again, and her breathing had become more labored. Anna looked at Damien, who was observing the scene with an unreadable expression. Mrs. Morgan died at sunset that same day, with Anna holding one of her hands and Damien the other. These were her last moments of peace, because what came after would change everything. After the funeral, a simple and private ceremony in the small local church, Damien sought Anna at the clinic. She was organizing the personal belongings Mrs. Morgan had left behind, small things of no apparent value. An old rosary, some yellowed photographs, a small jewelry box with simple pieces. "Anna," Damien said, and there was something different in his voice, an urgency that she hadn't noticed before. "I need to talk to you." They headed again to the small library, which had become a sort of neutral territory between them. Damien closed the door behind them, and Anna felt the environment immediately become more intimate, more charged. "I have a proposal for you," he said, without preamble. "I want you to come work for me." Anna blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "As a personal caregiver. I live alone in a large property and I have specific needs. Chronic pain, insomnia, some health issues that require constant attention." It was a lie, Anna could feel it. Damien Morgan radiated health and vitality. He was not a man who needed medical care, but there was something in his eyes, a carefully hidden vulnerability, that made her hesitate before refusing. "I don't know if it would be appropriate," she said. "Taking care of someone at home alone. People might think," people always think. "Anna, the question is whether it matters to you." He came closer, and Anna could feel the heat emanating from his body, that woody scent she had begun to associate with both safety and danger at the same time. "Why me?" she asked, echoing the same question she had asked at the restaurant. "Because you understand silence," Damien replied. "Because you don't ask unnecessary questions. And because—" he hesitated, as if about to reveal something important. "Because I trust you." It was a surprising confession coming from a man who clearly didn't trust many people. Anna felt something move in her chest, a mixture of fear and excitement that left her slightly dizzy. "What would the salary be?" she asked, trying to be practical, trying to hide the fact that she had already decided to accept the moment he made the proposal. The amount he mentioned was 5 times what she earned at the clinic. It was enough money to completely change her life, to give her a financial security she had never dreamed possible. "There are conditions," Damien continued. "You would live on the property, have your own quarters, but would be expected to be available whenever I needed you. There are certain areas of the house that are private, that you shouldn't access without permission, and—" he made a significant pause. "What happens in my house stays in my house." There was something ominous in those words, a suggestion of secrets she didn't yet know. But Anna discovered this didn't frighten her as much as it should. In fact, there was a part of her that was curious about the mysteries surrounding Damien Morgan. "When would you like me to start?" she asked. The smile that spread across Damien's face was different from any expression she had seen on him before. There was satisfaction there, but also something more primitive, something that made Anna's stomach contract in a way she didn't fully understand. "Tomorrow," he said. "I'll send someone to get your things." That night, Anna packed with trembling hands, knowing she was about to cross a line that would change her life forever. She was leaving behind the known safety of the clinic, of the small town where she had grown up, to enter the private world of a man she barely knew, but to whom she felt irresistibly attracted. As she folded her few clothes, Anna couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Morgan's last words, "Forgive her." She didn't know what she was doing. There was something in those words that resonated with a strange familiarity, as if they were the key to a mystery she didn't even know she was trying to solve. But it was too late for changes of opinion. She had made her choice, and tomorrow she would discover exactly what that meant. Damien Morgan's property emerged from the morning mists like a vision from a romantic nightmare. Anna pressed her face against the window of the car he had sent to pick her up, watching the landscape gradually transform from rural to something wilder and more isolated. The asphalt road gave way to a stone trail that wound through the Blue Ridge Mountains, climbing among centuries-old pines that almost completely blocked the sunlight. When the mansion finally revealed itself, Anna felt the air escape from her lungs. It was an imposing and severe construction, made of dark stone and iron, with straight lines and windows that looked like empty eyes observing anyone who dared to approach. There was nothing welcoming about that brutalist architecture, nothing that suggested human warmth or domestic comfort. It was a fortress, a place built to keep the world outside. The driver, a middle-aged man who hadn't directed a single word to Anna during the entire journey, stopped the car in front of the granite steps that led to the main entrance. Anna got out with her two simple suitcases, feeling ridiculously small before the magnitude of the construction. The main door, a massive piece of dark wood ornamented with ironwork that seemed centuries old, opened before she could even ring the bell. Damien was there, wearing a white shirt that contrasted with the severity of the environment around him. His eyes traveled over Anna from head to toe, an assessment that made her feel simultaneously desired and vulnerable. There was something different about him here, in his own territory. He seemed larger, more powerful, as if the mansion amplified his natural presence. "Welcome," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the entrance hall that extended beyond him. "Come in." Anna crossed the threshold and found herself in a space that defied any notion of home she might have. The hall was immense, with a ceiling that was lost in the penumbra, and a staircase of black marble that rose in elegant curves to an upper floor. There were no family photographs, no flowers, nothing that humanized that grand and cold space. "Impressive," Anna murmured, her voice sounding small in that environment. "It was built by my great-grandfather," Damien explained, taking one of her suitcases. He had grandiose visions of what a house should represent. Power, permanence, isolation from the outside world. They walked through long, wide corridors, passing by rooms that Anna only glimpsed through half-open doors. There was a library that seemed larger than the entire St. Vincent's Clinic, a dining room with a table for 20 people, living rooms with enormous fireplaces that didn't seem to have been used for decades. Everything was magnificent, and at the same time profoundly melancholic. "Do you live here alone?" Anna asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "For years," Damien replied, "since my parents died." "And before that?" He stopped walking and looked at her with that familiar intensity. "Before that, this house was full of voices, not all of them pleasant." There was something dark in those words, a suggestion that the Morgan family history had chapters he preferred to keep closed. Anna wanted to ask more, but the way he resumed walking indicated the subject was closed. They climbed a side staircase that led to the second floor, and Damien led her through a corridor less grand than those on the lower floor. Here there were more doors, more intimacy, though the environment remained imposing. "These will be your quarters," Damien said, opening a heavy door. "I hope they are adequate." Anna entered what were clearly the most luxurious quarters she had ever set foot in. There was a spacious bedroom with a canopy bed, a living room with a fireplace, a bathroom with a marble bathtub that seemed to have been sculpted from a single stone. The windows offered a stunning view of the mountains, but there were delicate yet firm bars behind the glass. "It's beautiful," Anna said, and her sincerity was evident. But wouldn't it be more practical for me to stay closer to your room, since I'll be taking care of you? Damien smiled, but there was something predatory in that expression. My room is in the west wing of the house. It's a private area where I prefer not to have interferences. When I need you, I'll call you. Anna nodded, though something in that arrangement made her slightly uncomfortable. There was a quality of isolation in her quarters that suggested more prison than hospitality. There are some rules I need to make clear, Damien continued, leaning on the doorframe in a way that partially blocked the exit. The West Wing, as I mentioned, is private. There's no reason for you to go there. The library and common rooms are at your disposal during the day, but after 9 at night, I prefer that you remain in your quarters. There's an intercom beside your bed that connects directly to me. If I need you, I'll call you from there. Anna frowned. And if I need something? Or if there's an emergency? Use the intercom, or simply shout my name. This house may seem large, but sound carries well through the corridors. There was something sinister in the way he said this, as if he had already tested this theory before. Anna felt a shiver run down her spine, but told herself she was being paranoid. When do we start? She asked. Now, Damien replied. I'm having one of my back pain crises. Would it be possible for you to prepare a massage? Anna nodded, relieved to have something concrete to do. Of course. Do you have massage oil or any topical analgesic? In my bathroom. I'll show you where. She followed him down the corridor, noticing how their steps echoed differently in different parts of the house, as if the acoustics revealed secrets about the construction. They headed toward an area that Anna presumed to be the limit of the West Wing, but Damien stopped before crossing an invisible line that seemed to exist in his mind. The guest bathroom, he explained, opening a door. It has everything you'll need. Anna entered the bathroom, which was smaller than her own private bathroom, but still luxurious. She found a therapeutic massage oil and some topical analgesics in a well-organized cabinet. When she came out, Damien had already removed his shirt. Seeing Damien's bare torso was a shock to Anna's system. She had imagined he would be strong under his well-cut clothes, but the reality surpassed her imagination. There were scars there, some old and faded, others more recent. His muscles were defined in a way that suggested not just exercise, but real physical work. There was something wild in that raw masculinity that made her suddenly aware of her own inexperience. Where is the pain? She asked, trying to keep her voice professional. Here, he said, indicating the lumbar region. And here, pointing to his shoulders. Anna applied the oil to her hands and began working on the tense muscles of his back. Under her palms, she could feel the contained strength in that body, the way he reacted to her touch. Damien made a low sound of approval, almost a moan, that sent waves of heat through Anna's body. You have skillful hands, he murmured, his voice hoarser than normal. Anna concentrated on the technique she had learned during her training, trying to ignore the way his skin felt under her hands, trying not to think about the fact that this was the first time she was touching a man in such an intimate way. But there was something hypnotic about that ritual, something that made her feel powerful and vulnerable at the same time. When she finished, Damien turned to face her, still without his shirt. There was something different in his eyes, an intensity that she hadn't seen before. They were very close, and Anna could feel the heat emanating from his body, could see the small scars that marked his chest. Anna, he said her name slowly, and this time there was something almost reverent in the way he pronounced it. Do you know why I really brought you here? Anna shook her head, unable to find her voice. Because from the moment I saw you, I knew you belonged in this place. I don't know how, I don't know why, but you belong here. Before Anna could respond, before she could fully process what he had said, Damien moved away and put his shirt back on, as if nothing had happened. Dinner will be served at 8, he said, returning to the formal tone of before. Wear something nice. And then he left, leaving Anna alone with the echo of his words and the woody perfume that seemed to have impregnated her skin. That night, as she got ready for dinner, Anna couldn't stop thinking about the way Damien had said that she belonged in that place. There was something possessive about those words, something that excited and frightened her in equal measure. She was beginning to understand that she had accepted much more than a job. She had entered the private world of a man who clearly didn't follow the normal rules of society, and she was beginning to suspect that perhaps she didn't want him to follow them. Dinner was served in the smaller dining room, a choice that Anna only understood when she saw the main dining room. Where the formal room would seat 20 people in an intimidating setting, the smaller one was almost too intimate. With a table for just 4 people and low lighting that created dancing shadows on the dark wood-paneled walls, Anna had chosen her only dress that wasn't completely casual, a simple navy blue model that discreetly embraced her natural curves. When she descended the stairs, she found Damien waiting for her, wearing a white shirt open at the collar and dark pants that accentuated his imposing build. He watched her descend each step, his eyes traveling over her body in a way that made her feel naked, despite being fully dressed. "You look beautiful," he said, and there was a raw sincerity in his voice that caught her off guard. "Thank you," Anna murmured, feeling the heat rise up her neck. "I don't have many elegant clothing options. I'll take care of that tomorrow," Damien said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "A woman like you should have clothes that match your beauty." Anna was going to protest that she didn't need expensive clothes. That wasn't why she was there, but something in his expression made her stop. There was an intensity in his eyes suggesting that contradicting him wouldn't be well received. The dinner was prepared by someone Anna didn't see, appearing as if by magic on the table, during the time they spent in the adjacent small bar. Damien served wine for both of them, a full-bodied red that Anna suspected cost more than her monthly salary at the clinic. "Are there no other staff in the house?" Anna asked as they sat at the table. "There's a cook who comes a few times a week, a cleaning team that works when I'm not here. I prefer my privacy." "It must be lonely," Anna observed, tasting the main course, a salmon prepared with a delicacy that revealed experienced hands. "I've always preferred solitude to inadequate company," Damien replied. "Until now." The implications of those words hung between them. Anna felt her pulse quicken, but also a hint of anxiety. There was something in the way he looked at her that suggested possession, as if she were already his property and just didn't know it yet. "Tell me about your family," Anna said, trying to change the course of the conversation. "Besides Mrs. Morgan and your brother, did you have other relatives?" The change in Damien's expression was instantaneous. The cold mask that Anna was learning to recognize descended over his features. "My family has a complicated history," he said dryly. "Not all chapters are suitable for dinner conversations. But you grew up here in this house." "Yes, I did, with my brother Michael. We were very close as children." There was pain in those words, but also something more, something that sounded almost like guilt. Anna remembered Mrs. Morgan's agitation when she mentioned the name Michael. "How exactly did he die?" Anna asked softly. Damien stopped eating and stared at her with an expression that made her immediately regret the question. There was something dangerous in those dark grey eyes, something that warned her she had crossed a line. "Car accident," he said, his voice ice cold. "On a stormy night. He was driving too fast on the mountain road." "I'm sorry," Anna murmured. "I shouldn't have asked." "No," Damien said, but his voice softened slightly. "It's natural for you to be curious. It's just some subjects are difficult to discuss." The rest of the dinner passed in relatively comfortable silence, but Anna could feel the tension accumulated in the air. There were secrets in that house, layers of history that Damien carefully guarded, and she was beginning to understand that her natural curiosity could put her on dangerous ground. After dinner, Damien led her to the library, a space that took Anna's breath away. The walls were covered from floor to ceiling with bookshelves. There were leather armchairs strategically positioned near windows and fireplaces, and the smell of old paper and aged wood created an atmosphere that was simultaneously welcoming and imposing. "Feel free to read anything you wish," Damien said, watching her explore the space with eyes bright with admiration. "There's a particularly good collection of American poetry in the section near the fireplace." Anna headed there, running her fingers over the spines of the books as if they were precious treasures. There were first editions of Whitman, Dickinson, Frost, a collection worth a fortune, and that had clearly been carefully curated over generations. "Your family was always cultured," she observed. "My great-grandfather believed that power without culture was vulgarity," Damien replied, approaching her. "He built this library even before finishing the house." Anna could feel him behind her, his physical presence altering the temperature of the space around her. When she turned, he was closer than she expected, close enough that she could see the small lines around his eyes, the exact shape of his lips. "Anna," he said her name like a caress. "May I ask you a personal question?" She nodded, unable to find her voice. "Have you ever been kissed?" The question caught her completely off guard. Anna felt her face catch fire, but there was something in the way he asked, without judgment, just genuine curiosity, that prevented her from feeling humiliated. "No," she admitted in a whisper. "Never." Anna shook her head, unable to maintain eye contact with him. Damien extended his hand and touched her chin delicately, making her look at him. There was something almost reverent in his touch, as if she were something precious and fragile. "May I?" he asked, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that Anna had never heard before. Anna knew she should say no. She knew that would complicate everything, that it would cross the line between professional and personal in an irreversible way. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something that made her forget all the logical reasons to refuse. She nodded. The kiss was different from everything Anna had imagined a first kiss could be. Damien was incredibly gentle, his lips touching hers with a softness that contrasted with his apparently hard personality. It was a kiss that asked instead of taking, that explored instead of conquering. Anna felt something awaken inside her, a sensation that began as heat in her stomach and spread throughout her body. When they separated, Anna felt slightly dizzy. Damien watched her with an intensity that made her feel as if she were being memorized. "How was it?" he asked softly. "Different than I expected," Anna admitted. "Better." Damien smiled, a genuine expression that completely transformed his face. "There will be others if you want." It was a promise and a threat at the same time. Anna knew she was falling in love with a man who was essentially a stranger. A man who lived surrounded by secrets, and who had made it clear that he didn't follow society's conventional rules. "You should go to your quarters," Damien said, though his voice suggested it was the last thing he wanted. "It's late and you must be tired from the move." Anna nodded, though she felt more awake than she had felt in years. When she headed for the door, Damien called her. "Anna." She turned. "Sleep well. And remember, if you need anything during the night, use the intercom." There was something in the way he said this that made her wonder if he expected her to need something, if he expected her to call him. When Anna reached her quarters, she discovered that her few clothes had been carefully organized in the wardrobe, and that someone had left expensive robes and bath products in her bathroom. That night, Anna had trouble sleeping. The bed was too comfortable, the silence of the house too deep, and she couldn't stop thinking about the kiss, about the way Damien's lips felt against hers. It was as if something had awakened inside her, something she didn't know existed. Around 2 in the morning, she heard a sound that made her sit up in bed. They were footsteps, heavy and deliberate, passing through the corridor outside her quarters. Anna waited, holding her breath, but the footsteps moved away, heading toward the part of the house that Damien had designated as the Forbidden West Wing. Curiosity had always been one of her strongest traits, and now in the darkness of the night, in a house full of secrets, she found herself getting out of bed and walking silently to the door. She opened it just a crack and peeked into the corridor. It was empty, but a faint light came from the direction where the footsteps had gone. Anna knew she should go back to bed, that she should respect the rules that Damien had established. But there was something about that light, about those night steps, that awakened a deep need to understand the man who had kissed her so tenderly just a few hours earlier. Against all her self-preservation instincts, Anna left her quarters and began walking silently down the corridor toward the secrets that the West Wing held. The West Wing corridor was different from the rest of the house. Where the other spaces of the mansion were grandiose but cold, here there was a more personal, more intimate quality. The walls were decorated with black and white photographs that Anna couldn't distinguish in the dim light, and the smell was different too, laden with memories and long-kept secrets. Anna walked barefoot, her feet making the least possible noise on the Persian rug that ran down the center of the corridor. Her heart was beating so hard, she feared the sound might betray her, but curiosity had become stronger than prudence. The faint light she had seen came from under a door at the end of the corridor, and Anna could hear low sounds coming from there, as if someone were moving objects or leafing through papers. When she got closer, she recognized Damien's voice, speaking quietly as if he were on the phone. Anna pressed herself against the wall, trying to catch his words. Can't continue like this, he was saying. It's been 15 years. It's time for you to accept reality. There was a long pause, as if he were listening to someone on the other end of the line. Michael, you need to understand that this isn't healthy. Being obsessed with the past won't change what happened. Anna felt her blood freeze in her veins. Michael. But Damien had said his brother was dead, that he had died in a car accident. How could he be talking to someone who was dead? She doesn't know anything, Damien continued, his voice lower now. And it will stay that way. Anna can't find out about you, about what really happened that night. Anna pressed her hand against her mouth to stifle a gasp of shock. They were talking about her. Damien was hiding something about his brother, something that somehow involved her. No, Damien's voice became harder. You can't see her. I won't allow you to terrorize her like you did with her. There was something in the way he said her that made Anna suspect he wasn't referring to her, but to another person. Someone from the past. Anna heard the sound of a chair being pushed back and footsteps approaching the door. In panic, she quickly retreated down the corridor, looking for a place to hide. There was a half-open door a few meters back, and she took refuge there, leaving just a crack to observe. Damien came out of the office, looking older and more tired than she had ever seen him. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration that humanized him in a way that contrasted with his usual controlled composure. For a moment, Anna almost revealed herself, almost came out of her hiding place to console him, but something made her stay hidden. When he moved away, Anna waited a few minutes before moving. Instead of returning to her quarters, as she should have done, she found herself pushed by a curiosity that had become uncontrollable. The office from which Damien had exited remained with the door open and the light was still on. Anna cautiously entered. It was a masculine space, dominated by a dark wooden desk covered with papers, photographs, and folders. There were shelves full of books and documents, and the walls were covered with photographs that told the story of the Morgan family over the decades. That's when Anna saw the photograph that would change everything. It was a large photo, framed in silver, positioned prominently on the desk. It showed two boys, clearly brothers, one about 15 years old and the other perhaps 12. The older one was unmistakably Damien, with the same intense eyes and the same striking features, just younger. The younger boy was blonde, with clear eyes and a smile that radiated innocence. But it wasn't the photograph itself that had shocked Anna. It was the date in the lower right corner of the frame. Just 5 years ago. If Michael had died 15 years ago, as Damien had said, how could there be a photograph of him dated just 5 years ago? Unless Damien had lied about his brother's death. Unless Michael was alive, and Damien was keeping him hidden for some reason. Anna picked up the photograph with trembling hands, examining it more closely. There was something familiar about the younger boy's face, something she couldn't identify, but that awakened a strange sense of recognition. That's when she noticed other photographs scattered across the desk. Some were old, clearly from decades past, but others were more recent. In one of them, Anna saw a young woman with dark hair and large eyes, holding the hand of an older man whom she recognized as being Damien's father. The woman in the photograph was her mother. Anna let out an audible gasp, almost dropping the frame from her hand. There was no possible doubt. That was her mother, younger, happier than Anna remembered, but definitely her mother, and she was clearly in an intimate relationship with a member of the Morgan family. With trembling hands, Anna began examining other documents on the desk. There were letters, some in feminine handwriting that she immediately recognized as her mother's. The letters were addressed to my love and spoke of secret meetings, of a forbidden love, of fears about being discovered. One letter in particular made her sit heavily in Damien's chair. My darling, I can no longer hide the truth. I am pregnant. I know this complicates everything. I know your family will never accept it, but this child is ours, is the fruit of our love. We need to find a way to be together, to raise our daughter away from the prejudices and hatred that surround us. Anna read the letter 3 times before she could fully process what she was seeing. Her mother had had a relationship with a member of the Morgan family. She had become pregnant from that relationship. And Anna was the result of that forbidden union. But with whom had her mother had a relationship? With Damien's father. That would make Damien her half-brother, which would explain. No, that didn't make sense. The dates didn't match up, and besides, there was something in the way Damien looked at her that definitely wasn't brotherly. Anna continued searching, her hands trembling as she leafed through documents that revealed an increasingly complex and disturbing truth. There was a birth certificate, partially torn, that showed her mother's name as Mother, but the father's name had been deliberately obscured. That's when she found what appeared to be a medical report, dated 23 years ago, shortly after her birth. The document spoke of a young woman who had given birth in a private clinic and who had been found dead 3 days later, in suspicious circumstances. The document mentioned an investigation that had been discreetly archived due to family considerations. Anna felt the world spin around her. Her mother hadn't died in an accident when Anna was 13. She had died shortly after Anna's birth, and the entire life that Anna believed she had lived with her had been a carefully constructed lie. Interesting reading. Damien's voice behind her made her jump from the chair, dropping papers on the floor. He was standing at the door, wearing only pants and a t-shirt, clearly having returned after discovering she wasn't in her quarters. There was something dangerous in his expression, a coldness that Anna had never seen before. He was no longer the man who had kissed her tenderly in the library. He was someone who had just discovered that his rules had been broken. His secrets invaded. "Damien, I can explain," Anna began, but he raised his hand to silence her. "Can you explain why you're in my private office, reading confidential documents, when I made it very clear that the West Wing was forbidden?" There was an icy quality in his voice that made her feel small and vulnerable. Anna realized that she was alone in an isolated house, with a man who had just discovered he couldn't trust her, a man who clearly hid potentially dangerous secrets. "I heard you talking on the phone," Anna said, trying to keep her voice firm. "You were talking to Michael, but you said he was dead. And you decided you had the right to investigate my private life? This is my life too." Anna exploded, her voice laden with emotion. "That woman in the photographs is my mother. Those letters are written by her. You brought me here knowing who I was, knowing about the connection, and lied to me about everything." Damien's expression changed subtly. The coldness gave way to something more complex, a mixture of guilt and something that could be sadness. "You don't understand the complexity of the situation," he said, his voice softer but still controlled. "There are things about your mother, about your family, about this house that you aren't prepared to know." "Then prepare me," Anna shouted. "Stop treating me like a child. My mother died because of your family, didn't she? She didn't die when I was 13. She died when I was a baby. And someone created an elaborate lie to make me believe I had a childhood with her." Damien approached her slowly, as if he were dealing with an injured animal. "Anna, you need to understand that some truths are dangerous, that some people would do anything to keep certain secrets buried." "People like you?" The question hung in the air between them. Anna could see the internal struggle in Damien's eyes, as if he were deciding how much of the truth he could or should reveal. "Sit down," he said finally. "It's time for you to know who you really are and why your life has been in danger since the day you were born." Anna sat in the chair that Damien indicated, but her body was tense, ready to flee if necessary. There was something in the office atmosphere that had completely changed with the discovery of her transgressions. The space that had before seemed merely mysterious now felt threatening, charged with secrets that could destroy everything she believed she knew about herself. Damien poured himself a glass of whiskey from a bottle he kept in a sidebar, his hands surprisingly steady considering the tension of the situation. He didn't offer anything to Anna, and she interpreted this as a sign that what she was about to hear wouldn't be something she'd want to process with a completely clear mind. "Your mother's name was Isabella," he began, without sitting down, remaining standing as if he needed the physical advantage that height gave him. "Isabella Bennett. She was 18 when she came to work for my family as a housekeeper. She was beautiful, intelligent, and completely innocent about the kind of family she had come to work for." Anna opened her mouth to ask a question, but Damien raised his hand indicating that she should just listen. "My father, Henry Morgan, was a powerful man, accustomed to having everything he wanted. My mother, Eleanor, was a cold woman, married to him for convenience, not love. And Michael—" he made a significant pause. Michael was 15 at the time, just a year younger than Isabella. The implication of Damien's words fell on Anna like a physical weight. "Are you saying my father is—" "Michael," Damien confirmed, his voice carrying an old sadness. "My younger brother is your father, Anna, and that makes everything infinitely more complicated." Anna felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Michael, Damien's supposedly dead brother, was her father. This meant she was Damien's niece, that the man she was falling in love with was her uncle. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "This can't be right. You said he died 15 years ago." "I lied," Damien said simply. "Michael didn't die 15 years ago. 15 years ago, he was committed to a private psychiatric clinic after a complete mental breakdown. The breakdown happened when your mother was found dead." The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together in a way Anna desperately wished didn't make sense. "He loved her." "He was obsessed with her," Damien corrected, his voice gaining a harshness that suggested old wounds still not healed. What began as a teenage romance transformed into something unhealthy when Isabella became pregnant. "Michael wanted to run away with her, marry her, raise you far from the family. But my father discovered the relationship." Damien took a sip of whiskey before continuing, as if he needed the liquid courage to reveal the rest of the story. "My father wasn't a man who accepted challenges to his authority. When he discovered that a maid had seduced his younger son, as he saw the situation, he decided that Isabella represented a threat that needed to be eliminated. He killed her," Anna said. "And it wasn't a question." "Not directly," Damien replied, but there was guilt in his voice. "He fired her, destroyed her reputation in town, made sure she couldn't get work anywhere. Isabella was pregnant, alone, without money. She sought out Michael, but my father had sent him to a boarding school far from here. She had nowhere to go." Anna felt nausea growing in her stomach. "And then?" "She gave birth in a charity clinic. You were born premature, small but healthy. Isabella was determined to raise you on her own, to prove she could be a good mother without the Morgans' help. But 3 days after the birth, she was found dead in the river that runs through the property. How did she really die, Damien? Don't give me the official version." Damien hesitated, and Anna could see the internal struggle in his eyes. "Officially, it was suicide. Postpartum depression," the report said, but there were injuries that didn't match that version. Injuries suggesting she had fought, that she had tried to escape from someone. "And you didn't do anything? Didn't investigate?" Damien's bitter laugh echoed through the office. "Anna, you don't understand the power my family had at the time. My father knew the sheriff, the judge, the medical examiner. The investigation was archived for lack of evidence in less than a week. Isabella was buried as an indigent, and you were placed in an orphanage." "But I remember my mother," Anna protested, her voice breaking. "I remember living with her until I was 13. "Implanted memories," Damien said softly. "You were informally adopted by a woman my father paid to raise you with a false identity. When you turned 13 and she died of natural causes, you were returned to the shelter system. My father wanted you far away but not dead. Even he wasn't monster enough to kill a child." Anna felt as if she were drowning in revelations. Everything in her life was a lie. Her mother, her memories, her identity, everything had been built upon foundations of deception and manipulation. And Michael? What happened to him when he found out? Michael returned from boarding school for the funeral. When he discovered that Isabella was dead and that he had a daughter, he went crazy. Literally, he attacked my father, tried to kill him with his bare hands. We had to sedate him and commit him. He never fully recovered. He's been living in a private clinic since then, obsessed with the idea of finding you, of avenging Isabella's death. That's who you talk to on the phone. Twice a week. It's the only way to keep him relatively calm, to prevent him from trying to escape to look for you. I promised him you were fine, that you were safe, but that it was better for everyone if he stayed away." Anna stood up abruptly, beginning to walk in circles around the office. The revelation that Damien was her uncle changed everything. The kiss they had shared, the attraction she felt for him, everything became morally complicated and disturbing. "That's why you brought me here," she said, stopping to face him. "You knew who I was from the first day at the clinic. You recognized me because I look like her." "You're identical to your mother," Damien confirmed. "The first time I saw you, it was like seeing a ghost." Isabella coming back to haunt our family for the crimes we committed against her. But why bring me here? Why not leave me in peace? Damien's expression became darker. Because there are other members of the Morgan family who know who you are. My cousin Edward, specifically. He took over the family business when my father died, and he has the same brutal mentality. Edward sees you as a threat, a living reminder of a scandal that could destroy the family's reputation if it came to light. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. He wants to kill me. He did. I convinced him to leave you alone as long as you remained invisible, working in a clinic in the countryside, not asking questions about your origin. But when you appeared taking care of my aunt, when Edward found out you were close to discovering the truth, he decided it was time to solve the problem, definitively. And you brought me here to protect me. I brought you here because I could no longer live knowing you existed and not doing anything about it, Damien said, his voice carrying an intensity that made her stop walking. Because I spent 15 years hating myself for not having protected your mother, and I couldn't let the same thing happen to you. Anna stared at him, trying to process the complexity of the feelings she saw in his eyes. There was guilt there, yes, but also something deeper, something she had interpreted as romantic attraction, but now could be something completely different. "And what do you feel for me?" she asked, her voice just a whisper. "Is it real or just guilt trying to compensate?" Damien put the whiskey glass on the desk with enough force to make Anna jump. "You think I brought you to my home, that I kissed you, because I feel guilt?" "I don't know what to think anymore," Anna admitted. "You're my uncle, Damien. What happened between us?" "It's wrong. Technically, I'm your uncle," Damien said, approaching her slowly, "but not by blood. Michael is my half-brother, son from my father's second marriage. We don't share DNA, Anna, and what I feel for you," he stopped right in front of her, "has nothing to do with family or guilt. It has to do with the fact that you're the only person I've ever met who makes me want to be a better man than I am." Anna could feel the heat emanating from his body, could see the sincerity in his eyes. But there were too many revelations, too many discovered lies for her to simply accept his words. "I need time," she said. "I need to process all of this. My entire life is a lie. My identity is false. I'm in danger because of something I didn't even know existed." "You have all the time you need," Damien said, "but you need to understand that you can't leave this property. Edward has men looking for you. Here, you're safe. Out there." He left the implication hanging. Anna nodded, feeling more prisoner than protected, but understanding the dark logic of the situation. "And Michael? When will I meet my father?" Damien's expression closed again. "Michael isn't the man you'd like your father to be, Anna. 15 years of institutionalization, of medications, of obsession. He's no longer the young man who loved your mother. He's dangerous, unstable. That's why I keep him away from you. But he's my father. And I'm the man who's protecting you from him too," Damien said firmly. "Some truths, Anna, are more dangerous than lies." The days that followed the revelations passed in a fog of heavy silence and unresolved tension. Anna remained in her quarters most of the time, coming out only for meals that were served in the smaller dining room, where she and Damien sat at opposite ends of the table like polite strangers. The ease that had begun to develop between them had disappeared, replaced by a cold courtesy that was more painful than any direct confrontation. Anna spent hours looking out the window of her room, observing the mountain landscape that stretched beyond the property. The delicate bars she had noticed on the first day now seemed less decorative and more functional, constant reminders that she was both protected and prisoner. Damien had ordered a more elaborate security system installed, and Anna could see discreet guards patrolling the grounds, men who clearly weren't gardeners or maintenance staff. It was on the 4th night after the revelations that Anna finally decided to break the silence. She went down to the library after dinner, finding Damien reading in one of the leather armchairs, the firelight creating dancing shadows on his face. He looked up when she entered but said nothing, just watched her approach. "I can't pretend anymore that nothing has changed," Anna said, sitting in the chair opposite his. "I need you to tell me everything. About my mother, about Michael, about what really happened that night." Damien slowly closed the book, his eyes never leaving her face. "Are you sure you want to know? Some truths can't be undone once revealed." "My whole life has been built on lies," Anna replied. "I can't live with more secrets. I need the truth, no matter how painful it is. Damien stood up and walked to the window, looking into the darkness beyond the glass. When he began to speak, his voice had a distant quality, as if he were narrating events that had happened to other people. Isabella was 7 months pregnant when my father discovered about her and Michael. He had noticed changes in my brother's behavior, the way he sneaked around the house at night, how he was distracted during the day. My father had him investigated and discovered that Michael was secretly meeting with one of the maids. Anna flinched at hearing her mother described merely as one of the maids, but remained silent. My father's reaction was brutal, Damien continued. He confronted Isabella publicly, in front of all the other staff, called her a seductress, a gold digger who had deliberately gotten pregnant to extort money from the family. Isabella tried to defend herself, said she loved Michael and that he loved her too, but this only enraged my father more. And you? Where were you during all this? I was 22, Anna. I was finishing college, thought I was too sophisticated and modern to worry about the family's domestic dramas. I should have interfered, should have protected Isabella, but... He paused, his voice laden with old guilt. I did nothing. Anna could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands closed into fists as he spoke. My father fired Isabella immediately, but he didn't stop there. He used his influence to ensure she couldn't get work anywhere in the region. He spread rumors about her, said she was dishonest, that she stole, that she seduced her employers. Within weeks, Isabella had no money, no place to live, no one willing to help her. And Michael was desperate. He tried to confront my father, said he would marry Isabella with or without the family's approval, said he would run away with her if necessary. But my father... Damien turned to face her, his eyes dark with pain. My father was a man who always got what he wanted. Anna. He sent Michael to a military school in upstate New York, literally kidnapped him in the middle of the night and sent him away before he could react. Anna felt tears forming in her eyes. So they truly loved each other. Obsessively, Damien confirmed. Michael wrote letters to Isabella every day, letters that my father intercepted and destroyed. Isabella, in turn, desperately tried to contact him, but the school had been instructed not to allow any outside communication. How do you know all this? Because Michael told me everything afterward. During his lucid moments at the clinic, he would obsessively reconstruct those days, as if reliving the pain could somehow change it. Damien returned to his armchair, but instead of sitting down, he knelt in front of Anna, taking her hands between his. His touch was warm, comforting, but Anna could feel the tremor in his fingers. Your mother gave birth alone, Anna, in a charity clinic 40 miles from here. You were born small but strong, and Isabella was determined to raise you on her own until she could reunite with Michael. But she died 3 days later. Yes, and that's the part Michael could never accept, never get over. Damien squeezed her hands. Isabella had gotten a job at a textile factory in the town where you were born. It wasn't much, but it was enough to pay for a small room and buy milk for you. She was gathering courage to write a letter to Michael, to tell him about you and ask him to find a way to join you. What happened that night? Damien hesitated, and Anna could see the internal struggle in his eyes. We never knew for certain. Isabella left for work as usual, left you with the neighbor who took care of you during the day. But she never returned from work. She was found in the river the next morning. How did she really die, Damien? Don't give me the official version. There were signs of struggle, defensive wounds on her hands, bruises on her neck that didn't match drowning. The original medical examiner, before my father interfered, said it looked like someone had tried to strangle her before throwing her in the river. Anna freed herself from Damien's hands and stood up abruptly, beginning to pace around the room. Your father had her killed. I believe so. But I never had proof, never could confirm it. My father died taking those secrets with him. And now Edward wants to do the same thing to me. Edward sees you the same way my father saw your mother. A threat to the family's reputation, an inconvenient reminder of past crimes. He's afraid you'll investigate your mother's death, that you'll ask questions that could reopen archived cases. Anna stopped in front of the fireplace, watching the flames dance. How long has Edward known about me? Since the beginning. He was present the night Isabella was fired. He was 19 at the time, but already displayed the same brutality as our father. There's a good chance he was directly involved in your mother's death. The revelation fell on Anna like a physical weight. Not only had her mother been murdered by the Morgan family, but possibly by the man who now wanted to kill her too. "Why are you protecting me, Damien?" Anna asked, turning to face him. "After everything your family did to mine, why risk your own life to keep me safe?" Damien rose slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because the moment I saw you at the clinic, I knew I had a chance to do something right. A chance to protect the daughter of the woman I couldn't save. Is that all? Guilt?" "No," Damien said, approaching her. "It's because when I look at you, I see not just Isabella, but the woman you've become despite everything that was done against you. I see your strength, your gentleness, your capacity to love even after having lost everything. And because when you look at me, I don't see the fear I see in everyone else's eyes. You see me as a man, not as a monster." Anna could feel the intensity of his words, the raw vulnerability he was revealing. There was truth there, she could feel it, but also layers of complication that she was still trying to understand. "What do you want from me, Damien?" "Zeus, I want you to be safe," he replied. "I want you to have the life that your mother never had a chance to have, and—" he hesitated. "I want you to forgive me for the sins of my family. And if I can't? If I can't separate you from the crimes your family committed?" "Then I'll accept that," Damien said, though Anna could see that possibility would destroy him. "But I'll continue protecting you, regardless of your feelings for me." At that moment, the shrill sound of the security system cut through the air, followed immediately by the voice of one of the guards through the intercom. "Mr. Morgan, we have suspicious movement on the eastern perimeter. 3 vehicles approaching by the access road." Damien quickly moved to the intercom. "Edward, we can't confirm yet, sir, but the vehicles were not authorized." Anna felt her blood freeze in her veins. "He's come for me." Damien turned to her, and for the first time since she had met him, Anna saw something that could be fear in his eyes. "Go to your quarters," he ordered. "Lock the door and don't come out for anything. If anyone other than me tries to enter, use the tunnel." "What tunnel?" "Behind the wardrobe in your room, there's a secret passage that leads to the cellars of the house. From there you can exit through the tunnels that connect to the mountain. There are supplies hidden there, money, documents. If something happens to me—" "No," Anna interrupted him. "I won't run and leave you to face this alone. Anna, you don't understand. Edward didn't come here to negotiate. He came to finish what my father started 23 years ago." The sound of approaching engines echoed through the windows, followed by the noise of car doors being forcefully closed. Anna could see lights moving through the trees, dark figures spreading across the property grounds. "Go," Damien said, taking a gun from a hiding place behind a bookshelf. Now, but Anna didn't move. Instead, she approached him and touched his face, forcing him to look into her eyes. "If we're going to die tonight," she said, "I want you to know that I forgive you, and that what I feel for you has nothing to do with guilt or gratitude." Before Damien could respond, before he could fully process what she had said, Anna kissed him. This time it wasn't the gentle, exploratory kiss of the library. It was a desperate kiss, full of all the words that hadn't been said, all the feelings that had been suppressed by the complexity of their circumstances. When they separated, the sound of breaking glass echoed from downstairs. Edward had arrived. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the main hall of the mansion, accompanied by male voices, speaking in low but threatening tones. Anna could hear furniture being moved, doors being opened and closed forcefully, the systematic noise of men searching for something, or someone. Damien gently pushed her toward the stairs. "Please, Anna, go to your quarters. This is not a discussion." But before she could respond, a man's voice echoed through the hall, carried with a cold authority that made Anna's blood freeze. "Damien, I know you're there, and I know she's with you." The voice belonged to Edward Morgan, and it had a predatory quality that made it clear he hadn't come to negotiate. Anna could hear other men spreading throughout the house, their heavy footsteps climbing the side stairs, surrounding any escape route. "I'll go to him," Damien said, checking the gun in his hands. "Maybe I can convince him to—" "You won't succeed," a new voice said behind them. Anna and Damien turned quickly to find a man standing at the entrance to the library. He was tall, blonde, with blue eyes that might have been handsome if not for the madness in them. Anna knew immediately who he was, even before Damien whispered his name. Michael. Anna's father looked older than his 38 years, his face marked by years of medication and mental suffering. But there was an intensity to him, a feverish energy that made him seem simultaneously fragile and dangerous. "How did you get out of the clinic?" Damien asked, keeping the gun pointed downward but ready to be used. "You think prisons can keep me away from my daughter forever?" Michael laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through the library. "When I found out Edward was coming here, that he was going to do to her what they did to Isabella." Michael turned to Anna, and she could see tears forming in his eyes. "You're identical to her. God, it's like Isabella has come back from the dead." "Michael," Anna said softly, "I'm Anna, I'm your daughter." "I know who you are," Michael responded, his voice breaking. "I've dreamed of you every night for 23 years. Dreamed of meeting you, of telling you about your mother, of—" "Edward is here," Damien interrupted. "We need to get Anna out of here before—" "Too late for that." Edward Morgan appeared at the entrance to the library, flanked by 3 armed men. He was younger than Damien, perhaps 40 years old, but there was a cruelty in his eyes that aged him. "Look at that, a family reunion. How touching." Edward entered the library as if he owned the place, his men spreading out to block all exits. Anna noticed that he kept his distance from Michael, as if he knew that Damien's unstable brother was unpredictable. "Edward," Damien said, his voice controlled but tense. "This doesn't have to happen. Anna poses no threat to anyone." "Poses no threat?" Edward laughed, a cold sound that made Anna cringe. "She's the daughter of a whore who almost destroyed our family. She carries the blood of people who tried to blackmail us, humiliate us. And now you've brought her into our house, as if she were an honored guest." "Be careful with the words you use to refer to my mother," Anna said, surprising everyone, including herself, with the firmness in her voice. Edward stared at her, his eyes traveling over her body in a way that made her feel dirty. "Ah, she has personality, just like her mother." Isabella was also defiant, also thought she could challenge the Morgans. "Isabella was an innocent young woman whom you destroyed," Michael exploded, taking a step toward Edward. "You killed her, killed the woman I loved and separated her from our daughter." "We protected the family honor," Edward responded coldly, "just as I'm protecting it now." Anna could see the tension growing in the room, like a pressure cooker about to explode. Damien kept the gun ready, but he was outnumbered. Michael seemed on the verge of collapse, his hands visibly trembling. And Edward? Edward had the look of a man who had come to finish a job and had no intention of leaving without completing it. "You two can leave," Edward said to Damien and Michael. "My quarrel isn't with you, it's with her." "If you touch her, I'll kill you," Damien said, raising the gun. "You're going to shoot me in front of the daughter of the woman you're supposedly protecting?" "What kind of protection is that, Damien?" Edward was playing with Damien's emotions, using his complicated relationship with Anna against him. Anna could see it was working, that Damien was torn between protecting her and not traumatizing her further. That's when Michael acted. With a cry of rage that seemed to come from 23 years of repressed pain, he launched himself at Edward. The 2 men fell to the floor fighting, and immediately the library exploded into chaos. Edward's men tried to intervene, but Damien fired a warning shot that made them hesitate. "Run!" Damien shouted to Anna. "Now!" But Anna couldn't move. She was watching her father, a man she had never known, fighting with the man who had probably killed her mother. There was something deeply cathartic about that violence, as if decades of injustice were finally being confronted. Michael was stronger than he looked, fortified by fury and desperation. He managed to roll on top of Edward, his hands finding his cousin's throat. "You killed her," he was screaming. "You killed Isabella." "She was a whore who didn't know her place," Edward managed to reply, even with Michael's hands tightening around his throat. That's when Anna heard the distinctive crack of breaking bones. Edward had managed to grab a heavy bronze statue from the side table and hit Michael on the head. Her father fell to the side, blood streaming from a wound in his scalp, his eyes losing focus. "Dad!" Anna shouted, running toward him without thinking of her own safety. Edward stood up, staggering, still holding the bloody statue. First the crazy father, then the bastard daughter. "I'm going to finish what should have been finished 23 years ago." But when he raised the statue to hit Anna, Damien fired. The shot echoed through the library like thunder. Edward fell backward, a red stain spreading across his white shirt. He looked at Damien with an expression of surprise, as if he couldn't believe his own cousin had shot him. "You shot me," he murmured, falling to his knees. "I warned you," Damien said, keeping the gun pointed at Edward. "I said if you touched her, I would kill you." Edward's men, seeing their boss on the floor, began to back away. They were mercenaries, not loyal soldiers, and without Edward to give orders and pay their salaries, they had no interest in continuing the fight. Anna knelt beside Michael, touching his face with trembling hands. "Dad, can you hear me?" Michael opened his eyes with difficulty, focusing on her. "Anna, my little girl, are you safe?" "I'm safe," she whispered. "You saved me. Your mother, she would have been so proud of you," Michael murmured, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "So strong, so beautiful." "Don't talk," Anna said, seeing Damien approach and check Michael's wounds. "We'll get medical help." "No," Michael said, holding her hand with surprising strength. It's time. I'm tired of living with this pain. Tired of dreaming of revenge. Now that I know you're safe, I can rest." "Dad, don't say that." Michael smiled, a genuine expression that completely transformed his tortured face. "You called me Dad. First time I've heard that." Tears streamed down Anna's face as she held her father's hand. "I love you, Dad. Even without knowing you, I always knew you loved me. I always loved you. And your mother. You two were everything to me." Michael's eyes closed and Anna felt his hand relax in hers. Damien knelt beside them, checking Michael's pulse. "He's gone," Damien said softly. Anna looked at her dead father, at Edward wounded but still alive moaning on the floor, at Damien kneeling beside her with tears in his eyes. In a single night she had met and lost her father, had seen the man who killed her mother finally face justice, and had discovered that the love she felt for Damien was reciprocated. "It's over," she whispered. "Yes," Damien confirmed, putting an arm around her shoulders. "It's over. You're safe now." Anna leaned against him, feeling the weight of 23 years of lies and secrets finally lifting from her shoulders. There was pain in the loss of Michael, but also a strange sense of completeness. She finally knew who she was, where she came from, and why her life had been shaped by the shadows of the past. More importantly, she knew she was no longer alone. She had Damien, and he had proven he was willing to kill to protect her. It was a love built on tragedy and blood, but it was real and it was hers. "What do we do now?" Anna asked. "Now," Damien said, kissing the top of her head, "we start over. You and I, no secrets, no lies, no ghosts from the past." Anna looked one last time at Michael, then at Edward, who was being carried by Damien's men to receive medical care before being handed over to the authorities. She knew there would be consequences, investigations, difficult questions. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing the future alone. 6 months later, Anna woke to the sound of rain gently tapping against the windows of what was now truly her bedroom. There were no longer bars on the windows, no more feeling of imprisonment that had marked her first days in the mansion. Damien had ordered them removed a few weeks after the night Edward was defeated, a symbolic gesture that marked the end of fear and the beginning of a new life. The investigation that followed the events of that night had been complex, but the truth had finally come to light. Edward survived the gunshot, but the discovery of documents in his office had revealed a network of corruption and crimes that stretched back decades. The authorities found sufficient evidence to connect him not only to Isabella's death, but to other crimes the Morgan family had committed over the years. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. Michael was buried next to Isabella in a small, peaceful cemetery in the mountains, where Anna could visit them whenever she wished. Damien had insisted on paying for a white marble headstone with a simple inscription: "Isabella and Michael, united in love, reunited in eternity." It was a gesture that had deeply touched Anna, a way for Damien to honor the memory of the parents she had lost. Anna rose slowly, putting on the silk robe that Damien had insisted on buying for her. He had kept his promise to provide clothes worthy of her beauty, but now Anna chose what she wore for pleasure, not out of necessity or obligation. Her wardrobe was full of elegant dresses, but also comfortable jeans and soft sweaters for the cold mountain days. She found Damien in the kitchen, preparing coffee as he did every morning. It was a domestic routine they had gradually developed, small rituals of intimacy that had replaced the tension and secrets of the first months. He wore only pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair slightly tousled from sleep, and Anna felt that familiar warmth spreading through her chest at the sight of him. "Good morning," she said, approaching from behind and wrapping her arms around his waist. "Good morning." "Love?" Damien replied, turning in her arms to kiss her softly. It was a morning kiss, full of promises for the day ahead, and Anna marveled at how something so simple could make her feel so complete. In the months that followed that terrible night, the relationship between them had evolved naturally. Damien had insisted on taking things slowly, respecting the fact that Anna had been through enormous trauma and needed time to process everything. They talked for hours, him telling stories of his childhood in the mansion, her sharing fragmented memories of her life in the shelters. Slowly, Anna had begun to understand the man behind the cold mask that Damien showed to the world. He was gentle, attentive, and surprisingly vulnerable when he was alone with her. The mansion had transformed from prison to home, the enormous rooms now filled with laughter and conversation, the fireplaces lit every night during intimate dinners. "How did you sleep?" Damien asked, serving coffee in 2 fine porcelain cups. "Well," Anna replied, accepting the cup and sitting at the kitchen island. "I dreamed about them again. About Isabella and Michael. Nightmares." "No," Anna smiled. "Good dreams. They were young, happy, holding a baby. I think it was me. It was as if they were showing me what it would have been like if things had been different." Damien approached and touched her face delicately. "You still feel guilt?" "Sometimes," Anna admitted. "Guilt for being happy when they never had that chance. Guilt for loving you when it complicates everything that happened between our families." "Anna," Damien said, his voice carrying a familiar intensity, "your happiness doesn't diminish the love they felt. And what's between us? It's not a betrayal of the past. It's proof that love can grow even in the midst of tragedy." It was something they had discussed many times over the last few months. Anna had struggled with conflicting feelings about loving a man whose last name was connected to the death of her parents. But gradually, she had come to understand that Damien wasn't responsible for the sins of his family, just as she wasn't responsible for the choices her parents had made. "I spoke with Dr. Matthews yesterday," Anna said. Referring to the psychologist she had begun seeing a few weeks after the events. "He thinks I'm progressing well. And you? What do you think?" Anna considered the question. In recent months, she had faced not only the trauma of discovering the truth about her family, but also the challenge of building an identity based on reality instead of lies. It had been a painful process, but also liberating. "I think I'm learning to live with the truth," she said, "and I think I'm learning to be happy despite it." Damien smiled, that genuine expression that completely transformed his face. "And us, how do you feel about us?" It was a question he asked occasionally, not out of insecurity, but because he wanted to be sure that Anna was with him by choice, not out of gratitude or circumstance. "I love you," Anna said simply. "I love the man you are with me. I love the life we're building together. I love how you make me feel safe and desired at the same time. Even knowing there will always be people who won't understand our history?" "Especially because of that," Anna replied. "Our story isn't simple, isn't easy to explain to strangers, but it's ours. It was built through pain and truth and difficult choices. It's more real than any fairy tale." Damien leaned in and kissed her again, this time with more intensity. Anna melted against him, feeling the familiar heat spreading through her body. The physical attraction between them had grown gradually, respecting Anna's pace, but now it was a powerful and constant force in her life. "I have something for you," Damien said when they separated, his eyes shining with something that looked like mischief. "Is it my birthday?" "It doesn't need to be your birthday for me to want to give you something." He left the kitchen and returned a few minutes later carrying a small navy blue velvet box. Anna felt her heart quicken. They had talked about the future, about marriage, but always vaguely, as something that might eventually happen. "Damien, before you say anything," he interrupted her, kneeling in front of her, "I want you to know that this isn't a traditional proposal. Nothing about us is traditional. But I want you to know that you're the only person with whom I can imagine spending the rest of my life. He opened the box, revealing a ring that took Anna's breath away. It wasn't a traditional solitaire, but a unique piece with a central emerald surrounded by small diamonds set in white gold. It was elegant but not ostentatious, classic but with its own personality. "The emerald belonged to my great-grandmother," Damien explained. "The only woman in the Morgan family who always seemed to me to have a gentle heart. I had it reset especially for you." Anna extended her trembling hand, letting him slide the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for her. "Will you marry me, Anna Bennett?" Damien asked, using her full name in the affectionate way that had become particular to them. "Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of your love?" Anna looked at the ring, then at the man kneeling in front of her. 6 months ago, she had been a lonely orphan, working in a clinic in the countryside, with no family, no prospects, nothing but poetry books to fill the void in her life. Now she had answers to all the questions that had haunted her, had honored her parents' memory, and had found a love that was both devastating and transformative. "Yes," she said, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "Yes, I will marry you." Damien stood up and took her in his arms, spinning her around the kitchen as she laughed. When he put her down, Anna pulled his face down and kissed him with all the passion that had been growing inside her over the last few months. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." "And I love you more than I thought I deserved to be loved," Damien replied. "You saved me, Anna. Saved me from an empty life, from carrying guilt forever." "We saved each other," Anna corrected. "And now we're going to build something new together. Something that honors the past, but isn't limited by it." They remained embraced in the kitchen while the rain continued to fall outside, two survivors of a family tragedy that had transformed into something beautiful. Anna thought about her mother, about Michael, about all the people who had suffered so that she and Damien could find each other. There was poetic justice in the fact that love had finally triumphed over hate, that the next generation had managed to break the cycles of violence and secrecy that had destroyed the previous one. "When do you want to get married?" Damien asked. "Soon," Anna replied. "I want to be your wife. I want the world to know that we chose each other despite everything." "And after?" Anna smiled, looking out the window at the mountains that she now considered her home. "After, we live. We live the life that Isabella and Michael never could have. We live with joy, with love, with the awareness that each day together is a gift." Damien kissed her again, and Anna knew that she had finally